Do you know what's the best thing about summers in Berlin? We don't have a beach. People go to lakes like it's a 70s slasher movie. And lakes have trees, and trees have shadow, and shadow is good for your fresh tattoo. If you live in a beautiful sunny place near the sea and you're reaching for a new piece, you don't have to wait until the fall. Don't worry, just take a plane and come here. You can have some fun during the weekend, which here lasts until Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, then a day or two of recovery, and then boom, new tattoo. Click the link in the description below and fill in the booking form.
Hola, Pato. Welcome back. This week, I'm kind of nervous. I'm legit nervous. I have like this big list of topics that I want to really get through, and I've been pushing some of them for the longest time, but I kind of made a deal with myself that I would touch on the most important ones before the end of this first season. And there's this one. That was not a fart, by the way. That was my sleeper, I promise. Regarding tattoo studios, right? You never want to fuck around with tattoo studios. I have friends that run them. I need to get invited to them when I'm traveling. So it's always a little bit tricky to, criticize them or to point out things that may not work about them, right? But I figured I decided to do things differently in my studio, and it would be very hypocritical of me to think that I don't want some of these things under my roof and pretend like everything is fine as long as it's happening outside, right? So yeah, fuck it. I think back in mid-season recap, I realized that if I'm not willing to make a few enemies, this is never gonna work. So here we go. Bye-bye guest spots. So one of the things, perhaps the main thing that Hiragana does differently than other studios, maybe not so much new studios, but definitely different than all the studios I had worked at, is the fact that I got rid of the percentage. Not only, I think this is, like I was saying, kind of becoming the new norm, especially not so much in tattoo studios, but collectives. There's a lot of collectives nowadays of tattooers which operate a little bit different. I like the idea of a collective, but I think that if someone becomes a tattooer and also has a different function within the structure, it's very difficult to compartmentalize what job is the one that artist should be based on, right? How fucking sad it would be that you need to get rid of one of the best tattooers at your studio because they're not great at accounting, or because they're sloppy with the cleaning, or because they're not really on top of the social media aspect of it. So I've always thought that giving tattooers inside a collective functions besides tattooing was a little bit tricky, at least not so much my thing. And I have the feeling that a lot of the collectives start anyway the same way that other tattoo studios started. One of the artists has the money, one of the artists has the space or the contract or whatever. One of the artists comes up with the name, decides on the brand, controls the social media. So that to me is not really a collective, right? So I guess I could theoretically and hypocritically call Hiragana a collective because it operates in a very horizontal structure. Everyone pays the costs of running the studio. with no profit on top of it, but it actually is not. So to me, I call it a regular tattoo studio, just that doesn't operate with percentage. There's two schools of thought when it comes to tattooers and tattoo studios. There's people that feel that studios make tattooers, and these are the people that I've always worked with, right? People that tend to see a little bit tattooers as employees without giving them any insurance or any holidays, paid holidays. But anyway, they keep on comparing them to people that work for a huge company or in the startup scene, and then of course they will always come really unflattering in this comparison, because tattooers can be fucking animals, but they would never fit in a 9-to-5 setting. So it's very unfair to compare them like that and to treat them like that. And I think this is almost like hangover from the way modern tattoo studios started, right? Back in the day, and you don't have to go like 100 years ago, like really not that long ago, you could literally not be a tattooer without a tattoo studio. You could not buy equipment, you could definitely not buy material, you would not have access to techniques and information. You were probably like chased and murdered by the Hells Angels if you would dare set up an independent operation in your garage. So I get it. If a tattoo studio owner is essentially taking you the same way that he could take the next guy and building you up to be something, and paying for all the expenses of promoting you, which at the time is essentially just helping you print business cards and bringing you convention after convention after convention, yeah, you owe him a huge chunk of your work, and you see yourselves as partners in this endeavor. You work your ass off, you got the platform through that studio, all fair and square. But as time goes on, and the role of studios becomes less and less and less and less in an era in which all-rounders disappear, and tattooers need to have their own style and their own voice and manage their own agendas and reply their own emails and be brand ambassadors and social media managers and blah 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 blah, the percentage model that was operating until then stopped making sense, right? Like the old school cut was like 60 for the studio, 60% for the studio against a 40% for the tattooer. Super fair spaces would have a 50-50. And then when I started, and I didn't start like 20 years ago, I started only like 10 years ago, finding splits of 60-40 for the artist was absolutely standard. If you would find like 30% cut for the studio was the nice deal that guest artists would get, right? And that was already taking into account, like, well, you have to fly here and the hotel and the expense and whatnot. So like we have 40% for all the residents, because we're super nice and you're a guest, you get a 30%. And I was like, oh my God, it's almost like better to be a guest and travel the whole time than being a resident in a studio. Then like the super nice spaces said like, fuck it, we're gonna make 30-70. And nowadays I think there's a lot of places that operate with more symbolic percentages. They operate with the 20-25 is kind of normal, and then maybe they'll have like a reward system, or like a, how's it called, like I don't know the word, like, yeah, essentially a reward system in which for the more money you make, the less percentage you pay and whatnot. Okay, familia, no more reading exercises. You know what time it is, I know what time it is. It's donation time. We're of course super thankful if you like, comment, subscribe, and share. No complaint there whatsoever. But we also need some money. A man has to eat. That's why we've launched a GoFundMe campaign to collect donations not only for this channel, but also to help support my other two projects, NewFob and Hiragana Studio, which are like my babies. And both of them, not one, but both of them, are non-profits that support independent tattooers. The work that I do there is pro bono, which is a really fancy way to say for free. So the cool thing about GoFundMe compared to other crowdfunding platforms is that it's not all or nothing. This means that you don't need to reach the campaign's goal to have access to the donations. So every donation that you send minus a little percentage for the platform will find its way to us and help us sustain these projects. Click the link in the description below, read a bit more about the campaign, and help us continue the good work. So there's clearly modern cases in which not only the percentage is lower, still bear in mind that is higher than any like agent or manager of a celebrity and whatnot. Like, of course, the margins are much different, but anything above a 15-20% cut on your money, knowing that on top of that you have to pay taxes, blah blah blah, is quite a chunk. But yeah, compared to 10 years ago, it has gotten double as good as it was, right? Like 40 used to be the standard. Nowadays it's 20 in a lot of like percentage studios, and what the studio offers proactively has also, of course not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, they make more of a proactive effort to provide service to tattooers, right? Back in the day, yes, they were doing a lot for you, but not so much because they were actively trying to do stuff for you, but because there were no other options for you out there, right? So by the sheer fact of existing, they were helping you more than any studio would nowadays. But I can see a lot of places where they do have a percentage, and the more people work and the more margin there is, the more they reinvest in the well-being of their team. Tattoo studios that have like chiropractors come to the studio, or chiropracticians or whatever come to the studio. They have like yoga once a week. They have, I don't know, like, you know, fucking social media experts coming and giving seminars, whatever it is. Although, you know, one could argue that this is just like the studio reinvesting in its assets so that they're able to generate even more money, which will translate into a bigger cut for them. And here's where it gets tricky, right? So of course things have improved also in percentage-based studios, but there is what, when deciding what to do with my studio, I was trying to figure out like, well, is there a percentage that feels more fair to you or more right? And I realized that the base of it just constitutes a conflict of interest, right? It's always presented to you like, well, it's a partnership. The more you work, the more we make, and we grow together like that. But that has always been a little bit the reason why I could not really tell what was it. But I guess when trying to define the model for my studio, I went like, oh fuck, it all boils down to that, right? There's this feeling of the owners of tattoo studios want you to grow, but not too much. And I have seen these time and time again, and I could never really understand why there was always the same cycle in which they would like build you up and try for you excel and blow up, and then at a point it was all about keeping your ego in check and keeping you down. And I'm not talking about myself. These I've seen repeatedly. I've gotten the inside information as a shop manager from the owner talking about other tattooers that are in my team, right? And I always wondered if there was a sense of entitlement, of like I created you and I can destroy you, and it was almost like needing to prove that you could, the same way that you could elevate an artist, you could also put it down, and it was just a display of power. I was never really sure what it was, and then when building my own studio, I went like, fuck, that's it. It's a percentage. It doesn't matter if it's the 5%. If you grow so much that opportunities start lining up and you start, wanting to travel more, I don't make money. If you get like super celebrated in your local tattoo scene and you get offers and get invited to collaborate in some events and make some flash day at other spaces, I don't get money. If you are going through a creative block and you want to step out for a minute so that you can paint for a little bit and get more perspective, I don't get money. So all these things that are part of an artist's journey to grow, they all translate into, you don't work here, I don't get a cut from what you get. You're going through a little bit of a hiccup with your appointments because you're trying to change your style and people need a minute to adjust to your new style. You decide to lower the prices. My pocket also gets affected. So I realized like, oh fuck, it doesn't matter how small it is. It will always be that way. If there's a percentage and I only get money when you work, then I will always have a problem with you flying and you, getting your wings. So I started thinking about the other patterns that I would always see in tattoo studios, and it's always the same. Someone comes in, doesn't know what they're doing, you build them up, they grow, they can see how you're not happy about them growing, they convince themselves of that narrative that if it wasn't for you putting them down, they would blow up. Eventually, they move out to create their own space where they can get finally margins, and they apply the only model that they know, percentage model, same way their old shop was working, and we start the cycle all over again, right? And I realized like, fuck, that also boils down to that, right? Like if you don't get threatened by people's success and you give them room to grow inside your walls, maybe they're not pushed to and forced to have to open their own space and replicate what you have here. It cannot be that this system that we have going on and this model works only for a chunk of your career, and then essentially you need to replace your mentor and your boss by creating a different space. No wonder that tattoo studios multiply like cockroaches, right? You don't have examples of healthy, long-lasting relationships between tattooers and studios, people that have been working in the same space 20 years, unless that person has like, panic of accepting big challenges and maybe, or like a super acute sense of loyalty and they don't dare leaving their mentor or whatnot. But you don't have like thriving people that have stayed in the same studio for a long time. And I think by getting rid of the percentage model, these may start changing, because at the end of the day, no one wants to deal with the hassles of opening their own studio. If you give them an alternative, they would much rather stay where they are if they feel like they're being treated fairly and that they're getting a lot for what they're paying. No one wants to have to start looking into real estate and get involved with contract disputes with the fucking real estate company and whatnot, people, tattooers, want to be able to focus on the things that they love, which are not only tattooing. So it might be that someone really wants to have their style and their brand thrive, and tattooing is just a part of that. And these type of artists should also have a place in a shop, So I guess you could say that I'm from the other school of thought. We have studios make tattooers. I strongly believe that tattooers make studios. I've seen it time and time again. Yes, it's true that studios can continue to exist after losing a really great team, but they essentially reinvent themselves and become a completely different studio whenever they finally manage, after a 2 to 5 year cycle, to find a new team that really clicks. It takes a lot of people coming and going to organically build teams, and studios that have been around for a long time, they've been 3 or 4 completely different studios based on the people that were there. Not only the humans that were inside the space and that made the working experience completely different, the customer journey completely different, also in terms of the energy, the vibe, the work that is out there. So I absolutely feel like without the right team, a studio cannot exist. Actually, we start to see some of these examples. I don't know what happened in the last year, but there's a ton of like high-end studios that appeared after Corona. I think probably rents, but I know for sure that's the reason why my studio also exists. Like, rents dropped, and it was the perfect time. If you were ballsy enough or crazy enough to go like 2020 or 2021, here we go, I'm opening my business. They were almost like giving you the space for free, right? So I think I went for a very conservative space to make sure that it was sustainable and whatnot, and people went for like baller spaces, like, fuck it, I can afford something in Schöneberg, giant, whatever. No judging, but I think there's a lot of people that that really created these spaces without really having maybe the experience, the background, the network, and knowing like, look, this space is dope, we have money, it looks amazing, how difficult will it be to fill it up with tattooers? And it turns out it's not that easy, right, motherfuckers? So all these spaces that are starting to get like emptied out, and that they have like space for fucking 25 residents and they have 3 of them or 4 and the rest is all guests, that's not a fucking tattoo studio. You cannot build a tattoo studio without tattooers. It's just a fucking empty space. So for me, the team is always the foundation, and especially nowadays, social media is made for people, not so much for brands. People react to people and they want to see faces and they don't want to see spaces, right? So I think today more than ever, artists have the possibility to thrive more than brands, and they have the possibility to bring a big audience to a studio. So it's almost becoming the other way around. Like, I could see, I don't know how then you make the business model sustainable, but it wouldn't be that crazy to imagine that in some years maybe studios figure out a way to I don't know, like, see their tattooers as content creators and have like content behind paywalls and whatnot, and have like their audience pay money to see their content, and then tattooers maybe become employees of a tattoo studio, and they get paid to generate content, and then instead of being so much like the studio saying like, okay, tell us what you can do for us so that we can hire you, maybe the people that generate the content that gets the most views or likes or whatever end up being super fought over, and we start seeing studio wars to get certain tattooers. I don't know, this is like pure sci-fi speculation from your crazy uncle, but there is a much stronger case for one artist to be instrumental in the growth of a studio that the other way around, right? So I realized that also as artists kind of position themselves away from the pack, right? They by I don't know, having their work be super relatable or compelling to an audience, or being really social media savvy and whatnot, you start seeing tattooers from the same studio, and ones are huge rock stars and others not. How can you keep a straight face when you're telling your team that everyone has equal value, when your little accounting brain tells you that, well, I mean, yeah, you all have the same value, but that guy with his percentage is fucking saving the studio right now, and you're a pain in the ass, right? The fact that even if it's with a small percentage, numbers don't lie. You end up getting inequality inside the team, and maybe even if you're a mixed model and you have a fly, god damn it, sorry, if you have a mixed model and you have rent for your residents, but you still go with percentage for your guest artists, how can you, I mean, yeah, maybe you try and convince yourself like everyone, I love everyone to come, and it doesn't matter if they have a lot of work or not. But if you get in a tight spot when planning the next quarter, how many times can you invite someone that you know they're not going to generate barely any money for the studio, right? How tempting it is when you get too many people requesting for the same time window to go, I mean, this guy has always like kicked in a healthy percentage, and that one, struggles with the appointments and whatnot, and you end up going for the person that will pay the bills. So that's, I think, the reason why studios, as they grow, they tend to go a little bit more to the safe option, to the mainstream, to the things that are like the best sellers. And there's no way you can start like that. You can start saying that you're betting on experimental tattooing and that you like things that are a little bit outside the box. But how can you do that and ensure that the studio also grows and thrives? It would simply be irresponsible to essentially have to voluntarily choose for the studio to take a dive. You would need to choose almost like, well, yeah, it will suck when it comes to money, but it will give us a lot of exposure, or it will give us credibility when it comes to the artistic integrity of the studio or whatnot. So I've found that the best way for me to really have everyone have the exact same weight, and then be able to value people not based off of how much work they have, but rather the quality of their work and the quality of them as human beings, is just to fuck percentages also for guests, and have these like great equalizer that rent ends up being. And it's a way more straightforward interaction for me. I pay for certain services, I get them, are they okay? Then I'm happy, and unless I break something at the studio, or unless I'm rude to your team, or I'm rude to my client, you're also happy. And then the rest, it doesn't become so much about surveilling your activities to then decide how much money we're gonna exchange. It's a very straightforward thing. It makes it really easy to understand, and then it gets out of the way, and I can judge you only as a human being, as an artist. And I don't care what you've done with your station, if you've been trading the entire gas pot, if you've been just sitting there and drawing and talking to the residents to be able to absorb information. I don't care if you've put out a free tattoo raffle on Instagram in order to get a little bit more of a push on socials, and then you just tattoo people for free. I don't care if you're exchanging tattoos for a free Airbnb room. What you do with the space that you've rented is yours to decide. So I don't know, respectfully, fuck percentage. Sorry. I think I dug a deep enough hole for myself this week. I'm gonna stick my tongue up my ass and get out of here. I'll see you guys next week. Before I leave, though, like always, subscribe, share, like, comment, donate. All these things really help. Now, I'm out of here.